Are we ready? Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Thank you, Emma. Well, good morning, everyone, to the Planning Policy and Built Heritage Working Party. Today, the 17th of May. Can I just ask that people who are not members of the Working Party very kindly mute their audio until invited to participate, just to assist with the smooth running of the meeting. We have Matt Strembovitz and Linda Yarham from Democratic Services on the call to assist me in the running of the meeting. Grateful to them. So if I can go to the agenda, item 1, apologies for absence. I believe that Councillor Grove-Jones and Councillor Gay are offering their apologies for this meeting. Emma?
Sorry, Emma's now gone,
Sorry,
but
Matt,
that is correct,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Matt, you're deputising, sorry, yeah. Yeah, that is correct. And that Councillor Wendy Fredericks is substituting for Councillor Grove-Jones. Thank you very much, Councillor Fredericks, for attending the meeting today. So we note their apologies. If we go to item 2, public questions. Do we have any public questions, Matt?
I'll just refer to Linda on that one. I don't believe there is, but I'll just check with Linda.
Okay.
No, we have no public questions this morning.
Okay, thank you, Linda. So if I can turn to pages 1 to 6, agenda item 3 for the minutes of the last meeting on Monday, the 19th of April. If I just go through these page by page, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, and finally page 6. Are there any amendments or queries, comments on those minutes? If not, can I ask for a show of hands, please, to approve those minutes? That appears unanimous. Thank you very much. I will sign those as and when at a later date as being a true and accurate record of the previous meeting.
Mr. Chairman, might I just intervene just to say that I didn't put my hands up because I wasn't present at that meeting. So if it appeared to be unanimous amongst those who did attend, that's fine. But I wasn't there. So to that extent, I wasn't able to partake in that vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon.
Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Punchard, yes?
Exactly the same comment.
Exactly the same point. Yeah, thank you very much. We will note that. Thank you. So moving on to item 4. Linda, do we have any items of urgent business?
No, Mr. Chairman, we have no items of urgent business this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So item 5, declarations of interest. Does anyone on the Working Party have a pecuniary or other interest to declare? And we have the very useful diagram on pages 7 and 8 to assist us in our decisions or declarations if we have any. I take it that no member has any declarations to make. That's fine. Thank you very much. So we move to item 6, which is update on matters from the previous meeting. I don't believe there are any, but is that the case, Linda? If I can just check with you.
There's no updates this morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to item 7, the first of 2 items being the main business of this morning. And this is a report, very substantial report on the Glaivam Valley Conservation Area appraisal and management plans of the 5 villages, which I am sure are on the additional presentation pack supplied with the agenda to you. So we've got Glanford, Baconsthorpe, Hempstead, Holt, and Leathering-set with Little Thornage. So if I can hand over to the Conservation and Design Officer, I believe, is that going to be you, Mr. Young?
Oh no, it's going to be me today, Alana.
Is it going to be Alana?
Yeah.
Okay, Alana, my apologies. The floor is all yours. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Right, can everybody see that okay?
Yes, that's fine, Alana. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to take you through first the Glaivam Valley Group A conservation area appraisals and management plans. So obviously, as Councillor Brown mentioned, these are for Glanford, Baconsthorpe, Hempstead, Holt, Leathering-set and Little Thornage. So we're seeking approval to adopt the appraisals for the above. The documents have been produced in collaboration with the Council's appointed consultants per cell, as the last group were. Funding was received for the review of the Glaivam Valley, and these 5 were selected as priority cases, mainly due to their early designation dates, a requirement for a stronger foundation to aid decision making, and a more of a need for robust definition and understanding of the areas themselves. So just for a bit of context, in case anyone's not sure, a conservation area is defined as an area of special architectural or historic interest, the character or appearance of which it is desirable to preserve or enhance. As a local authority, we are required to formulate and publish proposals for preservation and enhancement of the conservation areas. And the appraisal documents that are now being considered conform to current Historic England guidance. There are quite a lot of benefits to reviewing them. They're good as a tool to demonstrate the area's special interest, as a method of community engagement. The documents themselves are useful educational and explanatory tools, and as a way of understanding character. They also become a material consideration as part of the planning process, and as a management tool from our perspective as well. And obviously there's an opportunity to review the boundaries as part of that. So all of the reviews take the same structure. So it covers special interest, historic development, assessment of character, assessment of all the different heritage assets, as well as any sort of vulnerabilities and opportunities. And then that leads into management plans. So the consultation process for Group A, the 6-week period of public consultation was undertaken from the 1st of February to the 12th of March. A total of 16 responses were received from members of the public, parish councils and other interested parties. As part of this, all of the documents were made available online. We also had additional material produced to go onto the website as a series of web pages, which was in place of being able to hold a public meeting for obvious reasons, we weren't able to do that this year. We also had a press release that went out to various media outlets, and our communications team ran a social media campaign throughout the consultation process, which also involved the production of a video with Councillor Toy. So the main changes within Baconsthorpe really are the areas shown as A, which are fields, and they're not considered to provide any key views, and it's thought that their removal would provide more focus on the built development within the conservation area. But equally, their removal means that they would then fall into the Glaivam Valley conservation area. So they would still, they'd be part of the setting of Baconsthorpe, but they would also actually be within a conservation area themselves, just not the settlement boundary. There's some additions which include part of Pit Farm and some cottages along the street and Hall Lane, which display similar characteristics to a lot of the buildings within the village. Within Baconsthorpe, we've got a series of buildings that are proposed for local listing. I think there's 4 altogether. Within Glanford, there aren't any changes proposed to the boundary. The boundary covers most of the built form already, and the review didn't find that there was anything amiss there. Several buildings proposed to be locally listed here, which means that the majority of the buildings within the village would either be nationally designated or locally listed. There's a good level of protection there for all of the buildings, well, most of the buildings. Again, in Hempstead, there are no changes proposed to the boundary. It's all reviewed by Purcell and considered to be relevant as it was designated originally. Again, several buildings proposed to be locally listed here. So within Holt, several small changes, most of which are either removals of modern development, which includes some housing, some car parks, and sort of tidying up the boundary for the most part, where it cuts through areas or buildings. There's a house to be added, which is in the field to the east of the Horn Pits. It's an early 20th century building. And there are also 4 late Victorian Edwardian cottages to be added in as well, many of which retain original features and are sort of comparable to a lot of the buildings that are already within the conservation area. Holt has already benefited from a fairly significant review of the historic buildings. So a lot of the buildings here are already locally listed. However, Purcell did pick up on 1 additional building to be added to the local list. The most significant change within Leatheringset and Little Thornage is the addition of a long stretch along Blakeney Road, which is currently part of the Glaivam Valley boundary, which is characterised by sort of farms and former mills, not necessarily sort of small domestic buildings on the edges of villages. So in a similar way to Little Thornage, which is sort of kind of separate from Leatheringset, but still geographically quite close. The same sort of logic was applied to this area of buildings along Blakeney Road, So those are also now within the Leatheringset Conservation Area. There's 3 buildings here that are proposed to be added to the local list. So our recommendations today are that Working Party recommend to Cabinet to adopt the Glaivam Valley appraisals for statutory planning purposes, and that the appraisal documents are to become material considerations in the planning process. That Working Party recommend to Cabinet to agree the proposed boundary changes as recommended in the draft appraisals, and that they be published in accordance with the Planning Act. And finally, that Working Party recommend to Cabinet to agree the proposed local listings as identified within the draft documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Alana. Would you take the graphic away so that we, please, so that we can? That's great. Thank you very much. Well, obviously, this is quite a detailed piece of work that our department have undertaken in consultation with Purcell. And I thank Alana and her team for producing the report, and also for putting a summary together to send out to us with the agenda papers. So I will throw the meeting open to anyone who wishes to raise any comment or raise any questions regarding the contents of the report. I hope that people have also had a look online at the more extensive report, but before they make a contribution, as it were. So open to any member who wishes to come in and raise a query or make any comment, or are we content that the report can go forward to Cabinet in accordance with 3 recommendations that have just been referred to? Councillor Heinrich.
Just to say, Chair, I thank the officers for a very thorough piece of work here. It's just confirms all the conservation moves we've made in the past, and where necessary has strengthened them. I'm more than happy to propose acceptance of the recommendations. Thank you.
Sorry, Andrew, you're muted there.
Sorry, Matt. Do I have a seconder in addition to Councillor Toy prepared to second it? So I move this report that we send it to Cabinet. Councillor Dixon, do you want to come in at this point?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, I think your invitations to comment when you referred to members, I think may well be interpreted as members of the committee. I'm mindful that there are 1 or 2 local members who are joining us today as observers, and I just wonder if they have any comments that they would like to make before we close consideration on the matter.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Dixon. That's a good point. Any member who is not on the Working Party wishing to make any response?
I think Councillor
Vardy.
Yes, thank you very much. Only just to again to thank the officers. That's quite comprehensive synopsis of the changes. So yes, thank you, and I'm quite content with that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Vardy. Right. So I propose to move to the vote. We have Councillor Heinrich proposing, Councillor Toy seconding the 3 recommendations in the at the end of the report, as you have seen on the agenda. So if we can move to a vote. Matt,
Yeah, okay. I'll
how
just
do you
go
wish to do
to
this?
the names in order as a roll call. So Councillor Brown,
4,
Councillor Fredericks,
4.
Councillor Dixon,
4,
Councillor Fisher,
4,
Councillor Heinrich,
Or
Councillor Kershaw,
4,
Councillor Mancini Boyle,
4,
Councillor Pearce,
4,
Councillor Punchard,
4,
and I don't believe we have Clive here, do we? And Councillor Stockton. Sorry, Councillor Toy, even. Apologies.
4. That was 4, Matt. Thank
Yeah, okay. That's 10 in favour, 0 against, 0 abstentions.
right, okay, thank you very much for that, Matt. Right, so we move on to item 8 on your agenda, more of the Glaivam Valley Conservation Area, as it were, part 2. So this covers the settlement villages of Brinton, Thornage, Edgefield, Unworth, Sharrington, and Stoddy. I suppose I ought to declare a slight interest here that these villages are all within my district ward. So if I can defer to Alana again to just talk us through this proposal to send the draft appraisals out to public consultation.
Just check you can all see that again.
Yes,
Yeah.
you can see that, Alana. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Right. So this is the second group. What we're referring to is Group B. It's following on from Group A. So again, we are seeking approval for the draft Brinton, Edgefield, Hunworth, Sharrington, Stoddy and Thornage conservation area appraisals and management plans to be taken forward to public consultation. As with the previous group, they have been produced by Purcell on our behalf, and the sort of criteria for their selection is exactly the same as the last group. So starting with Brinton, the proposed boundary changes at first glance are quite major. However, at the moment, Brinton and Thornage are joined together as one conservation area. What Purcell have proposed is that these are split and that the meadow between the two settlements is removed from the designation, and the two become two separate designations, Brinton and Thornage in their own right. That area in the middle of the two villages would then fall into the Glaivam Valley Conservation Area. So it would still benefit from conservation area protection. It would just be within a different boundary, essentially. It's the same case for the areas marked as B. These are all fields, and they're either sort of arbitrary divisions. They don't follow anything on the ground, sort of where the boundary runs, that is. But again, being removed from the Brinton boundary, they would then fall into the Glaivam Valley. So we've got 2 recommendations for local listing within Brinton, neither of which actually are buildings, I think. They're both sort of walled features or railings. Within Edgefield, again, some sort of quite major suggested changes. So the area where we've got E, marked as E, that's to include some sort of 20th century former local authority housing. some of which are locally listed, some of which are nationally listed. Sort of the most intact versions of those. But we're proposing that those are all included within the conservation area. And the other major change here is the area marked as F, which includes the church, a farm, and some other sort of historic buildings. And there is some removal of modern infill development and some areas of fields as well. Again, a number of buildings proposed for local listing. In Hunworth, probably the most major one is the removal of the mill from the conservation area boundary. Again, similarly to Brinton, that would mean that the mill then falls into the Glaivam Valley. So that's considered that that would be more relevant to that designation, because that's the kind of feature that characterises the Glaivam Valley, as opposed to the settlement of Hunworth. There are some other removals of fields here, and a few additions of, again, some sort of 20th century former local authority housing, and some other areas where it's sort of tidying up the boundary a little bit. There actually aren't any proposals for local listing here. Within Sharrington, nothing too major. There's the addition of some fields, some extra buildings along sort of the peripheries, including the village hall, and some gardens that have been sort of separated from their dwellings. The removal of some sort of field areas, as well as another modern house, and some tidying up of the boundary again where it cuts through particular areas. We've got a few local listed proposals here too. So Stoddy is slightly different to the other ones because at the moment it's within the Glaivam Valley Conservation Area. However, Purcell found that it was the only village within the Glaivam Valley which is not in its own right a conservation area, which does seem to be quite an anomaly. So the proposal is to remove that from the Glaivam Valley Conservation Area and make it its own conservation area. And the boundary that's been drawn has encompassed most of the historic village core, sort of around the church. And similarly to a lot of the other conservation areas within the Glaivam Valley, it has a very rural character. A lot of the building materials and styles are typical of the district. And the current protection that it has as part of the Glaivam Valley will remain the same. It will just have a bit more weight, I suppose, or a bit more recognition as its own distinct conservation area. And there's one building within Stoddy that's proposed to be locally listed. As I touched on when I mentioned Brinton, the most major change here in Thornage is to remove the meadow between Brinton and Thornage. Again, it's the idea is that it allows a clearer definition of the special interest of each settlement by making them their own conservation areas as opposed to being joined into one. And obviously the meadow area between the two would still fall into a conservation area itself. There are some additions to the boundary here, some gardens that have been cut off from their dwellings, and the part of the grounds to Thornage Hall as well. And there's one building in Thornage to be locally listed. So consultation and next steps, we'll be looking to do a 6-week public consultation period during the summer, which obviously COVID dependent will include exhibitions within each settlement, publication of the documents online, invitation for comments from public, and hopefully a public open meeting, and we'll be looking at different ways of delivering this safely. And then once representations have been considered, the conservation area appraisals will then be amended and brought back before working party for final adoption by Cabinet. So our recommendations today are that the draft appraisals, as set out within the report, be approved for public consultation, and that the amended appraisals are then brought back to working party for consideration and subsequent adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Alana, for that, for presenting that to us. I think, well, there are a few questions that I have on this particular proposal, and that is, firstly, do we have a settled date as to when this might be going out to consultation later in the year?
Well,
over to you, Alana.
Yeah, sorry. We've sort of left it at summer at the moment because it's kind of dependent on how things go. I suppose ideally we'd like to do a public meeting because we weren't able to do that last time, and I think that wasn't ideal. So we would like to be in a position to be able to do that in some form. Hopefully by the summer that will be possible.
And presumably, is it your intention to roll out a separate consultation for the wider Glaivam Valley appraisal for the, as it were, the non-built heritage areas of the Glaivam Valley?
Yeah, that will follow the Group B consultation.
Right, yeah. So I think it's probably, I'm sure you'll make that clear to members of the public that although the boundaries are being altered for the settlements within this part of the Glaivam Valley, they will remain protected because they will be transferred, as it were, into the wider rural Glaivam Valley appraisal at a later date. I think the other thing as well, which may be worth getting across to members of the public, is that there are buildings which are nationally listed, such as the church in Stoddy, for example, I think, that don't require a local listing, therefore. And because otherwise I think people will be confused that when they look at the maps that you're going to be presenting publicly, that the church isn't included on it, but Stoddy Hall, for example, in Stoddy is. So I think we perhaps need to make that clearer, as I'm sure you will. I think people in Brinton will be very satisfied that they are no longer twinned with Thornage, because in terms of the parish council, they are twinned with Sharrington rather than Thornage. So that makes it more consistent with its parish council jurisdiction, so to speak, that it's either separate or at least not twinned with Thornage when it could be twinned with Sharrington. But so that I think is a benefit to the people in Brinton and Thornage. Any questions or comments from anyone? Officer Chris Young, and then Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I thought I would just chip in because I think the word consistent, which you used, is quite important here. And that's primarily what this review is about. Because basically we've inherited 30 or 40 years of conservation area designation. And at various stages, obviously, the justification and reasoning behind those areas was variable, shall we say. So this is about trying to make each of the individual designations relevant and fit for purpose for today's planning decision making. Now, the Glaivam Valley Conservation Area is unusual in the sense that it covers the whole of a valley. It's not a conventional kind of conservation area in the sense of following a built form of development. So what we've tried to do is establish some consistency and avoid the duplication that we have at the moment with certain areas falling into both. So you've got the landscape designation around the river and the milling heritage, etc. So it's about making sure that each of the individual settlements has a particular focus. They have their own special character, and making those discrete from the wider Glaivam Valley. So essentially, we need to kind of bottom all of the individual settlements, get those boundaries right, and then finish off with the review of the Glaivam Valley, which will kind of slot in around all of the individual settlements. So I thought that would just help explain the context.
Yes, thank you for that. I think on the wider Glaivam Valley consultation that will follow on, there will be some concern about the challenges from permitted development rights. I'm thinking particularly of the caravan club rules for tenting and caravanning on open rural settings within the Glaivam Valley, and also the relaxation due to the pandemic of the 28-day to increasing it to 56 days. I anticipate that one or two parish councils may have some concerns about our inability to influence such activities under those permitted development schemes to what they perceive as the detriment of the conservation area. But I realise that's probably completely outside the scope of our planning authority. So that's very useful to know that there will be, as it were, a mopping up exercise with a later consultation on the wider Glaivam Valley. Thank you very much for that. Any other comments? Councillor Pearce, can I bring you in at this point? You were wanting to speak?
I did, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I have to say, obviously, looking at this and hearing the reports, that this is a highly complex conservation area and appraisal. But I have to say also that I think what's happened today with the presentation, with the documents and with the general synopsis, it's gone very well. And the fact is, I found that the reports and the documents, whether they be a new style with the small diagrams, etc., very, very easy to follow in the sense that one can look at the screen, look at the documents and understand what is going on. So I think that's made everything a lot easier. And I think that's been borne out by the members' questions coming back. It's not a get out quick rich exercise. It's very complex, but I think it's been very ably explained and presented. And I think that needs to be minuted throughout the whole meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce, for your comments. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think the presentation is excellent, and that the officers and personnel assisting them are doing a very thorough and very professional job. Any other comments? Councillor Kershaw, can I bring you in? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. It's following on with what you were mentioning with camping and the summer. We're already getting reports of motorhomes being parked in country lanes, in villages, not moving. It's going to be contentious. I've had 4 parish councils get in touch already this week. As a council, we're trying to mitigate. We've been approached by caravan clubs and the Motorhome Society, and we're in requesting that they use registered sites. Enforcement is going to be difficult. We can only enforce, obviously, on NNDC land. We've already started issuing fixed penalty notices on Runton Road car park, people staying overnight. It's going to be a long summer, and it's going to be contentious. So we've asked for information to be sent to parish councils so they're aware of the limitations of our authority, but it is going to be a long summer from that respect. So I just thought I should enlighten you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kershaw. Thank you very much for your for informative remarks. That's very, very useful information. Councillor Toy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, whilst I appreciate, as you said before, we're sort of wandering off the subject, but happy to try and clear up here. Planning, along with other departments, are planning to put some web pages up and get information out to members and to parish councils so that they understand what we can and can't do through this period. So that is being worked on at the moment to try and make something as simple as understandable as possible. Clearly, there will always be differences, but yeah, that is being worked on. So hopefully that will give people some comfort, and we'll get that out as soon as we can. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Toy, for that. Yes, it's going to be challenging, but we just have to try and manage these campsites or caravan sites as best we can over the forthcoming summer in the interests of our local residents. So any other questions or comments? Is that a legacy hand, Councillor Toy?
No, I put that up just to I think if you're happy that we're done that, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to go back and say, yeah, thank you to the officers for what they've produced, and I'll be happy to propose the recommendations for the subject that we've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you for answering my next question, Councillor Toy. Do I have a seconder for this proposal? Councillor Kershaw, thank you very much. Right, Matt, if we can move to a vote on the recommendations as itemised on the agenda.
Yep, no problem. So I'll just go through the roll call again. Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Fredericks.
4.
Councillor Dixon.
4.
Councillor Fisher.
4.
Councillor Heinrich.
4.
Councillor Kershaw.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Pearce.
4.
Councillor Punchard.
4.
And Councillor Toy.
4.
Okay, that's all in favour.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Matt, for that. Right, so I think moving on to item 9, we don't have any business at my discretion under item 4. Item 10, no cause to exclude the press or the public, and we have no exempt matters under item 11 or exempt business under item 12. So unless we have any other business, Linda, I don't believe that we have. I think
That's correct.
Thank you very much. I think we can conclude the meeting this morning, which is quite a short one by our standards, and thank everyone for their attendance, and in particular Councillor Vardy, to perhaps your first meeting following your election success. So thank you to all members and to all in attending and for your input this morning. And we will see you in due course. Don't go overboard with our newfound freedoms as of today. Do hug your loved ones with care. Councillor Kershaw, would you like to comment?
Sorry, Chair. I think we should also welcome Councillor Victoria Holiday as well. She's joined the meeting, and she's now a member for Coastal.
Thank you, Councillor Kershaw. My apologies, Councillor Holiday. I wasn't. I must have missed you joining the meeting. So congratulations to you on your election, and welcome to this meeting. With that comment, I would like to call the meeting to a close. And thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.